Hey, g'day.
G'day, g'day.
Welcome to our wrap-up of our Defender. Also, go back and have a look at some of the old videos. We will give an overview of things in our car, the mods, some of the fittings and all those sorts of things,
Yep.
How we feel about it. Of course, we'll cover some of the issues that we had. This is just a wrap-up, and really, despite the fact that we had some moments, the car was a really fundamental part of us having a fantastic year, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
Yeah, so it's a little bit hard to separate it. So the car and the caravan, even though you have things which happen, you've really got to weigh up, did it detract from the year or did it help support the year, and what do you reckon?
It did more supporting than
we went to some amazing places, didn't we? Yeah, and the car helped us do that. And I think I'll mostly go through it because it's mostly car stuff, and
that's a bit boring for me.
But it is actually, when we bought the car, it was my car, Paula sort of had to be sort of satisfied. And what did you feel about it?
For me, it was all about the comfort and the look and the ability for me to potentially be able to drive it if I needed to.
And you did drive it.
And I did drive it.
Yeah.
And I have since. And it's a very comfortable car, and we drove lots of kilometres, and we were quite comfortable the whole time.
And we did do a couple of sketchy things, didn't we? So
yes.
Particularly towing 3.5 tons of caravan behind us, and it did all of that. So in the preview, we showed some of the footage of where we've been. Please keep watching, even if you saw the preview, because I've included a number of other bits and pieces about the equipment that's fitted to the car, some other factual information in there. By all means, skim it and see what might be of interest, but hopefully you find the package useful to show. Is this the best off the production line tow car tourer available for people who want to tow a van as we did, between 3.5 tons? Or is it, as some people suggest, just a city car? I think the Land Rover Defender, controversial statement, right? I think the Land Rover Defender is actually the best off the production line off-roader tourer, particularly if you're towing a van of, you know, up to 3.5 tonnes. I mean, I think it's brilliant at 3 tonnes, right? You know, up to 3 tonnes. You know, 3 to 3.5 tonnes, you're pushing it to its edge in terms of its rear axle capacity. But you can do all that without having to do GVM upgrades, which you can't do, right, on this car. It's got a unibody frame. It's a powerful, capable car, and it provided you can keep those weights within the rear axle limit. They say 350 kilograms on the ball. I'd say to you it's 300 kilograms, and in practical terms that's the same as just about any other tow car rated to tow up to 3.5 tonnes. But so virtually all of the mods we did went to different issues. I think it's really important to actually understand why we bought the Land Rover Defender. So we bought it in 2021. Keep in mind we were coming out of COVID and other things. And I've got to say the options were limited, right? Now that's not an excuse, right? Because we actually liked this car, all right? We went back to it a couple of times and we liked it. And it doesn't mean that we didn't have some reservations. It really is a pretty good unit. And it's comfortable and it looks good and it feels good and it drives really well. But we did actually walk away from it because we couldn't get a straight answer at the time from Land Rover about its towing capacity. So beyond the headline that it can tow 3.5 tonnes, and it can, it's powerful enough to do it. We were also learning pretty rapidly at that stage, you know, and this stuff's mind-boggling for people who haven't got a long history of towing and understanding weights. And we read about it very carefully, and we discovered that the Defenders that we were looking at only had a rear axle capacity of 1,800 kilograms. When I looked at all of the factors that go to towing a 3 to 3.5 tonne van, which our van was going to be, we couldn't make the numbers work. And then we saw the Cruisemaster review of their Land Rover tow tug towing, as it worked out, a Zone RV off-road caravan. I'm not going to critique that. It was actually from our perspective, it's a useful video. And if you're thinking about buying a Land Rover and you're going to be towing something over 3 tonnes, right, something with a ball weight over 300 kilograms, I suggest you do go and have a look at that video, right? There are some factors about it. You know, the hitch they were using is heavy, it was longer, their tow ball weight was actually 330, but as it worked out, they couldn't make it work. They were just over their weights with nothing else in the car at the time. It's not uncommon when you're dealing with tow tugs. But we looked at all this, disappointed, but we walked away. It was in that process that we were then going back and forth to Land Rover because we discovered, as Cruisemaster had pointed out, that the 7-seater car has a higher rear axle capacity. We were looking then at a series of other cars, and sorry for the Toyota guys, but the 300 series was not in production, all right? It was, frankly, to our view, well off production. They had a mile-long waiting list, and they were even starting to return deposits because they had taken more deposits than their production schedule was ever going to allow them to do. You know, the 300 wasn't available and wasn't going to be available to us for some time, and we didn't like it, right? And even Toyota friends, the same Toyota friends are telling us not to buy a Land Rover, were telling us not to buy the first runs of the 300 either. We had the choice of 200s, which at that price, if you recall, were exorbitantly priced, right? Exorbitantly priced, ridiculously priced, with quite often huge kilometres, and I know you can put a lot of kilometres on them, but huge kilometres, but really unknown histories. You know, you just had to assume that some of them had been, you know, into salt water if you're in Queensland, you know, they'd been through the ringer, and they're pretty heavy on the fuel, right? So we sort of thought there was virtually no value that we could see. We were looking at the Patrol because it was powerful enough, it was big enough, it was going to do it. Had some reservations about that, particularly it being petrol, okay, but that was the more likely option. We looked at the Ranger. Again, we weren't sure that really solved the problem, the rear axle, in the end either. But funnily enough, its turning circle it turned like a dog, and and this becomes a critical factor as to why we came back to the Defender. We live in a city, right? And at that stage, we thought the lap for us was still a couple of years away. So the car had to be a crossover car, and good enough to get in and around town, be my work car, and it had to be a good off-roader tow car as well. We came back to the Defender, we came back to the 7-seater, and it was a new car, and we knew that brought risks in relation to what was the best car. This was the best car for us, so we bought it. After the capital expense of the car and the van, the next biggest expense was fuel. So we got 17.2 litres per 100 kilometres, because overwhelmingly around that 32,000 kilometres, overwhelmingly most of it was towing. Towing off-road, on rough roads, on slow roads, but I think that's better than just about any car that you're going to compare it with. Just on fuel, silly little thing, right? But the fuel filler is the narrow filler, right? So not for high flow diesel, but they have a little adapter which can go into the filler, which is mostly for filling from jerry cans, right? So you can actually use that as an adapter for high flow fuel. AdBlue, we did use a fair bit of AdBlue, right? So it doesn't use that much AdBlue. It's actually quite an efficient engine. It's quite an emissions efficient engine, and that's a whole different topic. But this car is Euro 6 compliant already, right? Some of its other competitors in Australia are not. We always carried a 1 litre spare with us just in case we end up somewhere remote and there was no AdBlue at that particular service station. Wheels and tyres. So we did modify our wheels. So it comes standard with 20-inch wheels, and what I'd really call, they had all-terrain tyres on, but they're really road tyres. Now, we did actually take those up Tiwa Beach, and the car performed very well in the sand. The sand on Tiwa Beach is relatively firm, right? Unless you get well away from the watermark, and it's dried out. But those 20-inch wheels, even with those road tyres on it, did very well in all that. So, so when you're worried about weights and all those sorts of things, if there's nothing else you can do apart from putting perhaps better rubber on, if you're going to do a trip, the 20-inch wheels would be quite doable. And you are more likely to be able to replace tyres at 20-inch than you can with the 19-inch, which is the other offering. I think 19, 20, 22-inch. I think 22 inches for people who want their cars to look schmick around town. It wouldn't be my choice, right, for off-roading and for touring. We chose to go to 18-inch, which required a modification, and that means that you had to change the calipers on the rear brakes. Same size, same braking power, and it's actually a Land Rover part, right? It doesn't have, there's some cooling fins on the one that go on the 20-inch wheels in the D300. That actually meant you couldn't fit an 18-inch rim on it, so you had to replace that. We got our wheels from Tough Ant, right? So we got the Kimberley 18-inch, so Tough Ant Kimberley 18-inch. I think they look excellent, right? I really like them. The smaller alloy wheels are actually lighter than the OEM wheels. They helped arrange getting the brake calipers changed over. That requires an engineering inspection, right? So they've got an approval to do that, and you get a compliance plate. No impact on the braking capacity whatsoever. And you can have the 18-inch wheels, and that meant that we could then put some higher profile, more aggressive off-road, more aggressive all-terrain tyres, and we had the Maxxis Razor AT811 on. Excellent tyre. We chose between that or the Falcon Wild Peak. I think both of those tyres, as people have reported using them, are probably wearing a bit faster than most of us would like. And in our case, we spent a lot of time on pretty brutal gravel roads, aired down because of corrugations and all of those sorts of things. So whilst the wear has tended to be pretty even, the tyres themselves are wearing a bit faster than we'd like, but they're still an excellent tyre. One of the things we did do is we removed the lock nut, right, that required the keyed keyed socket to undo. Security measure, obviously, so people can't steal your rims. We were aware of a circumstance where one of our colleagues driving a Defender in Western Australia got into a remote place, had to change the wheel, the tyre, and the lock nut was not in the place it was supposed to be. So to be honest, in fact, it was when we were with Warts just dealing with the turbocharged thing. So we said, guys, while we're at it, let's just remove those lock nuts. They gave them back to us, and just put standard wheel nuts on, just in case we ever lost that. The last thing I wanted to be was remote and not be able to do something like readily change a tyre. We did have to, however, juggle some of the weights to deal with the rear axle. So even with a car with 1900 kilograms on the rear axle, when we first weighed our rig, full water, everything. So we did that as soon as we got the caravan, and we were 50 kilograms over on that rear axle. That didn't worry us because that was the purpose of weighing. And we had a lot of stuff in the back of the car. We had a platform rack on the back with a little bit of gear on it. We wanted to take a fridge with us, but it was a heavier fridge. So to deal with it at the time, we moved some gear out of the car, and then we made a number of changes to respond to that. So we took the platform rack off. It's 32 kilograms. So we chose to remove the platform rack and put 3 much lighter cross rails on. Just on that, the standard sized bars for the Defender that Rhino will supply are actually a bit wider than the car. So when you put your awning on, it actually stands off the car a bit further than we like. So we just cut the bars. We took the heavy fridge out and put a fridge that was nearly 12 kilograms lighter in the back. We took some of the other gear out of the back. So we chose to remove the third row seats temporarily. Some states you can do it permanently, right? You can't do that in Queensland permanently without going through a compliance regime. And the weight that we then put back on was we wanted our max tracks on the roof of the car. We wanted a lighter awning. We got a Drifter Stockton awning, just a little bit smaller than some of the other 270-degree awnings. And we wanted to carry recovery gear in the car with us, because when you're unhitched and you went driving off to explore, you quite often forgot certain things. So we wanted the recovery stuff with us, and we obviously wanted the essential tools with us. Even though the new wheels were lighter, right? The tyres, of course, there's more heavy rubber in them. So that adds a bit more weight. Somewhere between 20 to 40 kilograms spare on the GVM when we're all fully loaded and towing. So we don't have sliders, we don't have rock sliders, right? So we have no extra steps. We didn't put a dual battery system in. We rely on a 7.5 kilogram Bluetti. Not ideal, but not too bad for operating the fridge. But they were the main modifications we did. So the car itself had advanced tow assist as part of the tow pack, which is sort of built in, which is part of the software setup. The camera view around all of that, excellent, right? No issue. The ability to reverse and having how the reversing camera onto the tow ball. Very useful. There's more advanced features that you can use. The ability to use one of the wheel controls on the Pivi Pro to actually help reverse the van just by, if you like, joystick. I can actually reverse the van, and we didn't really get into using the tow assist. Tow mirrors, we used, and we get this question a lot, we use a bracket on the arm from Defender 3D in the UK, and then we just put a standard Malenko mirror and arm into that bracket, and that holds everything really still and much better than the systems which try to sit onto the side mirrors of the car. In terms of towing and tow cabling, all the things that you've got to do, Red Arc Tow Pro Elite, and we put the button down where you can see it down here, just down below where the electronic brake is. Not the best location for a brake controller. That's where there was a blank. So, and we've been fine. Of course, we had to put in extra cabling for the Anderson plug to connect the caravan, because the power into the DC to DC charger goes in via a higher amperage Anderson plug. UHF GME 330. A lot of people prefer the 370. We've had no problem with the 330. It did everything we needed, and some of the more advanced functions, even of that, never mind the 370, we just didn't need. Very, very happy with that, and it's a must. I just think if you're going to be doing this sort of driving, particularly if you're towing with a caravan, you really do need to be able to talk to people. So the UH is pretty essential. If you can't afford that, right, just go and get yourself a decent handheld. The other mod, which I'm so glad we did, is we had the front bar put on, and that was a Rhino 4x4. Now, there are some others coming to market shortly, and on that, you know, one of the problems for the first couple of years is you didn't have too many aftermarket mods, and Land Rover will never have as many as, say, for Toyota. The ecosystem just isn't big enough, but there's a lot more now. We got the Rhino 4x4 bar. Overall, we've been happy with that. It protects, of the two options that were available to us, either the Land Rover one, which protected the lights and a little bit higher up the front of the bonnet well, and had some hoops on it, but does not provide protection to the auxiliary coolers that are just down on the bottom left and bottom right of the car in front of the wheels. And that's the place, the wombats, in our case, 2 roos that we hit, all impacted in and around that area. And we've seen some pretty devastating pictures of some people who've hit wildlife and taken out those auxiliary coolers, and that takes your car off the road. We had one option, one which protected high, one which protected low. We went for the protection of the low with the Rhino 4x4. Very happy that we did that as experience worked out. One of the other questions that we get from people is about the lack of a camp mode, and some people refer to it as the power drainage for the Land Rover. And we did talk about that very briefly early in one of our other videos, so you can go back and have a look at all that. But like a lot of modern cars, particularly those that have got electronics in them, they do draw a lot of power from the battery, and the security. And with the fob, you know, when you get the fob and you open the car, it tries to get the systems up and running, and they stay on for a while. You can see various forums which talk about it, and that actually means that, you know, it takes, you know, it tries to preempt and power up those systems, and it takes a little while for them to settle down. And particularly if you've got your key fob close by and the car is unlocked, it can actually keep drawing that power. And some people have found, and we found it when we were on Fraser Island, where you'd wake up in the morning and then you'd get a warning to say that the battery was low, start the car. We did have a circumstance where the battery was so low that we couldn't jump start it. That was at home. And fortunately, whilst at first Land Rover didn't necessarily agree, they were actually servicing the car and they charged it up, and the next morning they had trouble starting it, and they agreed that that particular battery had collapsed. Right, so they replaced that under warranty. But in terms of the camp mode, we've found that we've been able to sort of manage that. We keep the car double locked, shuts the systems down, and when you're in camp mode, make sure that most of the things that you need to access are in the rear door, because when you activate the rear door, even when you're close with the keys, it doesn't start up the systems. It doesn't start the Pivot Pro and the systems up. So it's actually designed in that regard to actually minimise that power usage. So we've actually got quite used to using it, and the only other tip in that regard is you've got to give the car a good long regular runs. If you can't, put the battery on a charger, you know, routinely, just to keep it nice and conditioned up. That we had a couple of issues with the car. The very first issue we had, and it was a recurring issue, was that for some reason it kept throwing up a warning light and telling us that the car was going into 2-wheel drive. And Land Rover were having real trouble trying to determine why, and essentially told us that ours was the only car that they'd come across that had done it. They couldn't replicate the issue when we took it back, and it happened quite a few times. Now, we were actually able to manage that issue. Right, we were able to manage it by resetting the car and those sorts of things, but it clearly wasn't the way the car was supposed to operate. So we had some reservations about commencing our lap. Really, Land Rover sort of said, look, we'll try and fix this. And whilst they had the car, while they were trying to fix it, they actually damaged a component called the driver assist unit. They fried it when they were trying to do a particular update. That put us back a long time. So that was not inherent about the car. That was actually something that they did while they were trying to address this other issue. And that part wasn't available. So that set us back. We've reported on that before. They got the part eventually, and albeit a bit late, we set off. And we continued to have that light come on and off at various times, but we were able to manage it. And can happily report now that that's been fixed. Well, we hope it has. When we got back to Brisbane, we went back to Land Rover and said, we're back. They had a whole new service team in place. So we sort of did actually have to go back to the beginning a little bit, and they started doing all the diagnostics, and that was a little bit frustrating. But again, they're going through the process of trying to replicate it, but we were able to show them plenty of photos of what was happening there. We had lots of evidence. It's this new service team, they were fantastic, right? So apart from the fact that they had to start again, they did set about trying to do something about it. And fortuitously for us, not so fortuitously for one other person, we did find one other example that while we were away, that someone had had that issue, and Land Rover had, in that case, decided that it was something internal, might likely have been sensors, but something internal to the transfer box. Not because there was something fundamentally wrong inside the transfer box, but whether it was sensors or others, and they don't break open and repair transfer boxes anymore. So expensive repair, but it's the whole unit. So when we got back, they actually decided to do that, and they got the part relatively quickly. The other issue that you would have seen way back when we were in Western Australia, we did go into limp mode, and they had to replace the turbochargers. And it was an electrical fault in one of the turbochargers. They couldn't isolate it, and we reported on it. We're not going to go over it again, but I'm not going to gloss over it. All right, so it happened, and that set us back a bit over there. But as we've reported before, the service dealership in Geraldton, the Warts, were fantastic, brilliant, okay? And we actually got back on the road, I believe, in very good time. And frankly, I just can't imagine that there's too many other circumstances for any brand where you'd have something like a turbo problem, they'd recover you, they'd have it repaired, and they'd have you back on the road in a matter of weeks, right? So I think that's exceptional. Go back and have a look at it if you want to, right? Painful memories for us, but we're now 25,000 kilometres down the track, and we've had zero recurrence of all that. The car's actually operating the way it's supposed to, so that was good. I think the only other issue of note was that we were getting a rattling in the back, and it was annoying, and we thought it was something like the inertia reels, right? It was a tapping that sounded almost like Morse code somewhere around the back. It was very hard to isolate it. And in some of our videos, if you look at them, you'll hear it, and you'll wonder what's rattling. Is it a seatbelt rattling or something like that? It was actually one of the Land Rover Defender forums where someone said, hey, and it's particularly for people who are doing a lot of off-roading, right? A lot of the heavy stuff and a lot of corrugation. They found that it was rattling the rear shock absorbers and actually tapping, slowly loosening the top nut of those rear shock absorbers, and that was the tapping that you could hear. But it was a very plasticky sound, not a metallic sound. Whilst they shouldn't come loose, and best we can tell, it was probably something to do with the manufacturing of the early models. What it did when it twisted, it also twisted the cable that was going in for the adaptive control sensor, and they're very fine cables. So not in our case, but one person had them where that had actually fractured or frayed the cable, and they lost some of the elements of their adaptive suspension. Again, it doesn't take you completely off the road when that happens, but it does limit some of the functionalities, and and it's an expensive and a highly capable car. So we'd heard this, and in fairness, if we'd known earlier, we might well have been able to address it to the extent that it was never a problem after that, just by tightening it. And it's not a simple tighten, okay? There's a couple of things you've got to do. And in the 7-seater, the top nuts are tucked away under trim and all sorts of things like that. So by the time we found that out, I actually pulled some trim out and had a look and thought, yeah, no, this is the issue. We're able to effect a very temporary repair, but perhaps some of the damage was done. When we got back to Brisbane, our Brisbane guys, who've been fantastic, they took another look at it for me and they said, yep, that's what it is. They put in what they call the EPQR reports, the reports into the system and say, hey guys, here's something that we should look out for. And they're good things, guys, right? All manufacturers have them. They put service bulletins and they put reports and they keep an eye on different things which crop up so they can manage them if it becomes a trend. And they said, unfortunately, it wasn't caught early enough in your case, and we'd been all around the country in the roughest of stuff, and they said, but no problems, we'll replace the shock absorbers for you. But, you know, and I make this point for all the people who jump in and go, aha, you know, Land Rover reliability. We saw plenty of cars with broken suspension and broken shock absorbers, and people who'd put very expensive aftermarket shock absorbers into their cars, right? And those things broke. Right, that's just the nature of conditions in Australian roads. So yeah, look, you know, we put this car through the ringer, right? Nearly 3.5 tons of caravan into all these sorts of roads, all things that the car is supposed to be able to do. But you know, and we wish some of those issues hadn't happened. But the good news is they've all been resolved, right? And I think that's a critical thing. And way back when we had the trouble with the turbocharger, we made the point that whilst it wasn't good that had happened, our ultimate assessment of this car would be held over until we saw, could it get us right around the lap? Did it get us to the places that we wanted it to get to? Can it do it safely? And is the Land Rover backup such that they'll actually fix those things? And they did. And apart from the overrider, that I do actually think that this is one of the areas that Land Rover are going to have to look at. That is both the cost, Land Rover, okay, the cost of parts, but also the availability and ready availability of spare parts. Because some people are reporting that some of those are taking a little while. In all of that, we got to the end of the lap, the car's in, and here we are. We think, touch wood, that all those issues are resolved, and even then they didn't actually stop us from going to pretty much all the places we wanted to go. So we missed out on Carragini because of the time in Western Australia. Not great, okay, not great, not the end of the world either. Anyway, make of that what you will. We've had an overall good experience with Land Rover service. Terrible when they fried that part, right? And delayed us, and we're very unhappy about that. And we've had some things, and we had some things to say about some elements of the roadside assist in terms of a rental car. But if you've watched our previous vlogs, go back and have a look at them. Overall, when we had the worst of times over in Western Australia, they recovered us quickly. The escalation point at the Customer Relationship Centre, CRC, was excellent and keeping us informed. The Warts, right, at Geraldton, brilliant, right, and helpful, and had some of the things that they'd wanted to do happened on the very first recovery. We would have been back on the road even faster. So and I've spoken to the head of the CRC, right? So I've seen the best and the worst of Land Rover service, and when we got back to Brisbane, and with a new service team, we had an excellent discussion with the service manager. And I made the point that given all the things that we had been through, I wanted to continue to see the best of it. And they did. And I know that's not a universal experience, right? I'm on Land Rover Defender forums. I know that some people don't get that from their dealers. Yeah. So all we can say is we did experience the worst of it early. We kept working at it. And in fairness, we've also seen the best of it. So right now, we're happy with Land Rover service. So pile on the hate. Let's pile on the hate because, that's just what we've seen. A couple of other quick things. One of the things that people ask, you know, would we do anything different? For the most part, no. But there's two things that we change. One of them critical, and one of them just to make life a little bit easier. We would certainly, and we now have, a gap ID tool, and that would have been helpful, particularly when we had the turbo issue, to help isolate what that problem is. And it wouldn't have meant that we could just reset it and continue. We were able to reset that at the time, but it had to go back to get fixed, so it had to be recovered. But for a number of things where you might be able to clear the fault code, that would be very useful. So we've now got that, we now carry that. The other thing is to save weight overall in the rig. We really only want one jack, and we just want one bottle jack. And we're going to get an adapter for the bottle jack so that it actually fits into the fittings for the lift points for the Defender. And that means that we don't have to carry the clunky jack that is part of the Land Rover toolkit. So they're the only two things that we would particularly change. So look, thanks for all that, and I've gone through a lot. If you look very carefully in the video, there's lots of things that we don't talk about, but I've told you where they're from, and you know, and the things that we've included. It would have been dishonest not to cover a couple of the things that went wrong, and you can't gloss over them. They're very painful.
Yep.
But no question, right now as it stands, the car's fixed.
Yep.
We've had some really good experiences actually with Land Rover service,
Yes.
you know, in Western Australia and with the team back here in Brisbane now, so that we've come back. So, you know, the fundamental question that some people ask, I mean, they ask, would we do the same thing again, or would we change the car? We do the same thing again because you can't change the conditions that were around when we bought the car, and I've already gone through that. And I suppose the question is, how do we feel about the car now? We really like the car. I mean, there's no question, it is a good car. It has gone to some amazing places for us, and it's fixed, and it's still under warranty. So I think we'll keep watching the market. And I think the other thing is, if you've seen our van update, we're looking to see where we go with the van. We like the base, and we may well keep it. We are looking to see there's something slightly smaller that still has all the comforts that we want. If that changes our decision on the car, of course, practically you would do that. But I think right now, the car is working the way we want it to work. It's fitted the way we want to fit it. It's comfortable to drive. It tows the thing that we want it to tow. It's still under warranty. And the Land Rover probably has lost a little bit of value. So you've got to ask yourself the question, why would we change it? So if you're not brand tribal, and we're not brand tribal,
no.
Okay, you know, we are completely open if there is a better car for us out there, you know, when we're making the decision. But if you're brand tribal, if you wanted us to suddenly say, oh, sorry, everything Land Rover is bad, and we've changed our mind, and we're really going to go to a Toyota, right? Or if you're a Land Rover enthusiast, and you want us to say, under no circumstance would we ever change from a Land Rover, you're not going to get that from us.
Not from us, no.
If you're deciding on a tow car, we don't mind which tow car. It's of no consequence to us. You've got to be comfortable in it. We hope some of the considerations actually help you with some of your own decisions. If you're looking at a Land Rover, we hope some of those do also help you as well, and you've got to make up your own mind on it. But I hope you found it honest, and whether we're going to sell it or going to keep it, we had to get those addressed and fixed before we did, and we have. But on that note, yeah, it's a wonderful car, and my number one reservation throughout the entire time we had it was, it's a good car. Hopefully, it lives up to its potential and its promise. And the question we had, I think, at various times was Land Rover, Jaguar Land Rover, up to providing the support for this car? Okay, and they did, and they are. Okay, so, you know, if that's the standard that you set and that's the experience we get, well, then we'll share it with you.
Yeah.
And if you've got a different experience or a different view, then you know, then you have to take that into account. So on that note, that's it. By all means, put some things in the comment. Share if you've got a different experience, or if you've got some different kit or some suggestions or questions. I'll try to answer those as we always do.
Yep.
But I think the next time people see us, it'll be when we're doing the next adventure, won't it?
Yeah, our next adventure.
And we've got one being planned, which is a little bit different, and we won't be taking the Landy to that one, I don't think.
No, I don't think so.
No. I think that would be a little bit chilly and a little bit far away,
yes.
But you know, that's as far as we're going to say.
I don't think it drives on water.
Okay, all right, on that note, thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Again, thanks for joining us. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and remember, 100% of our YouTube advertising revenue goes to charity.